You don't matter when the money's in the way. And that's the way you look at it. Like everybody listening today to this broadcast, if you really think the government cares about you, I'm sorry, that is not the case. You're there to help the system move forward, but if you disappear, then there's somebody else behind you, and it's just that mentality. So, sorry, you're not special in the eyes of the government and the powers that move this society forward.
Adapt 2030 Mini Ice Age Conversations covers changes in our climate due to a new and intensifying grand solar minimum. In the media, overlooking, downplaying, or burying cold weather changes occurring on our planet. This is in order to keep the global warming agenda steaming full speed ahead. I do this podcast and radio program because we need to begin conversations on how to adapt our food growing strategies long before 2030 as agricultural zones shift, affecting global crop output, but very few mainstream media outlets are talking about the most important issue of our time, cold weather crop losses. Our sun is going through a 400-year cycle, which has effects on our weather patterns as our magnetosphere weakens and the jet streams go out of flow. It's not CO2, it's not you, it's the sun. Are you ready to thrive in the grand solar minimum? Then join me for Mini Ice Age Conversations. I'm your host, David Dubine.
You know, if they were doing solar radiation management, David, would they not tell us if it was just beneficial uses, if that stuff that they put up there, you know, heavy metals coming back down on us, and generally heavy metals, except for in trace amounts in our bodies, are something that's kind of detrimental to our, what we call life?
Yeah, I would agree. And again, the fear factor, you know, if you give people two choices, you got solar radiation management or geoengineering, where they say they fed us this whole CO2 causes warming. So, you know, on the other hand, people, even though they know geoengineering is going on, they're like, well, even in their underbreath, well, we don't like them spraying the metals, but, you know, they're trying to stop all the runaway global warming. Versus choice B, hey, we got to put cosmic radiation management up there because, you know, those galactic cosmic rays that are coming in, if we don't stop it, you're going to have the once in a 1,000-year flood every single storm, and your DNA is going to start changing. And you might even have instant evolution because of the high cosmic ray density. So please sleep well tonight, and remember to get up to go to work tomorrow, and please pay your taxes. Are they really going to come out and tell people that? That would freak everybody out if they came out really with the cosmic radiation management versus the geoengineering, solar radiation management, where people still think if they get the community groups together, they can stop the spraying in the skies. I think it's another layer of the onion a little bit deeper, but giving human psyche, would you tell the truth to the masses? Would you really?
You know, they do it kind of subconsciously. It's like, you know, now it's like you can go out and you can buy UV resistant clothing, you know, and it's, you know, it's kind of a new fad and everything. They don't tell you that, you know, we never used to need that because there wasn't that much UVB coming through. And, you know, oh, it's a 10 today on the UV scale, you know, and be careful out there and don't go out during this period. They're kind of subtly telling us that, you know, we're in a lot of trouble, but they're not really telling us why or what its causes might be or if there's any way that we could protect ourselves against it.
Well, that upset the balance of finance on the planet. You know, there's a number of people required to keep everything going. They go to work, they need to pay taxes, they buy stuff, they pay taxes, they work. You don't matter when the money's in the way. And that's the way you look at it. Like everybody listening today to this broadcast, if you really think the government cares about you, I'm sorry, that is not the case. You're there to help the system move forward, but if you disappear, then there's somebody else behind you, and it's just that mentality. So, sorry, you're not special in the eyes of the government and the powers that move this society forward. I wish we were doing it a different way. I'm really trying my best to try to bring my little specialty for the explanations of the changes in the sun so people can have better awareness to try to get ready for these changes that are ongoing at the moment. It's not going to start in the future. It's ongoing. Like when we were kids, do you remember ever having a UV 15 day? Like I can never remember that as a kid where it was UV 15. Now it is always 12 or 15. When it was 7, your mom would be like, sunscreen on 7, and now it's 15. Yeah, it's something, even 20 is sometimes. It's incredible, the changes.
Even in the middle of winter, you know, I'd be out, you know, duck hunting or something like that, and how many ducks flying around. You know, it's like, well, you know, I got up real early, I'm tired, you know, I'd find a little hole in the thicket where there's a little patch of sun coming down through a thicket, you know, and I'd crawl up, you know, in the weeds, in the vines down there, you know, and take a nap, you know, and that warm sun, you know, it really felt good. Now you try and do that, you find you a little hole in a thicket and curl up on it, and the sun stings. Even during the winter when it's cold, it doesn't feel good anymore.
Yeah, and these expected UV changes as the sun reduces its output moving forward. And I'm going to say something bold here, but I do believe the sun's going to go through a spectral change as well. So we've seen it go from yellow when we were kids to white, and there's a distinct color difference in the sun comparatively when we were kids. Like that yellow I remember as a kid, this white sun we're seeing now is completely different. Now, as we transition deeper into this grand solar minimum, I would say it was somewhere around 2028, 2030, the sun's going to shift to a slightly blue tinge. Now, imagine the effect on society when people look up and see a slightly blue tinged sun. How are they going to explain that to everybody? But the UV will be so far off the charts by that point. I mean, it'll be like one of those space movies where they're on the other side of the moon where they put their arm through the shadow and it almost catches on fire. It'll be something like that.
I just want to explain to folks out there again, you're not trying to scare anyone out there. What you talk about might have scary implications, but we're just trying to inform people of what we've been lied to about, how much we've been misinformed, and trying to get them to understand the reality of our situation a little bit better. Is this what you're trying to do, Dave?
Yeah, that's right, because you're in this with me. I'm in it with you. There's nowhere to run. If we had anti-gravity craft, perhaps we could escape to a different planet and wait this thing out. But we're all here together on this planet. And I'm going to go through the same changes with the climate on the surface of our planet as you are. So if people are more prepared as to what's going on, maybe we're all more prepared. Because I look at it as I'm doing my preparation and I have a fair few people around me. But what about yourself? What if you have a fair few people around you and then our communities can connect and we're all more readied? This is the kind of state that I want to explain the problem and then offer the solutions. I don't want to just talk about the problem and say, hey, get scared, there's a big problem. This only comes once every 2,000 years, this rain cycle that's coming back and the weather patterns are going to shift and we're looking at a multi-millennia cycle here. I wouldn't just run away and leave you with that info. I want you to get the solutions. Okay, you got to explain the problem first so then you can understand the solutions. And we've been through it before multiple times. You got to work through it. There's been reductions in population, but not to zero.
In today's world, a vast number of people have immediate access to basically the knowledge of the planet, at least as far as we've been told the knowledge. But simply because you have knowledge does not mean that you are knowledgeable, that you can take that knowledge and you've actually thought about it and thought about the implications that string of words might mean. You might have knowledge, but that does not mean, simply because you know that there is something called geoengineering going on, does not mean that you've actually become knowledgeable about it. You've actually sat and thought about its implications, what its possible benefits might be, what the negatives might be. You just know that there's something called geoengineering going on, and that's stuff coming out behind the planes up there. It does not make you knowledgeable. You might know about it. You might know that it's a concept that's there, but you have not been allowed to sit back and think about the possible implications.
The food production of a country is really its productivity, because you look at nations around the world that don't have any of their own domestic or very limited domestic food production, they're generally not the strongest economies on the planet. So I really believe in my own mind here that food is the economy of a nation. So, talking in practice, looking on your computer screen on how to grow food, okay, go out and grow me 50 kilograms of something, whatever, XYZ. By the time you even realize how to go out and get those skills together, it takes years to get all that. I'm still learning on how to do our vertical tubes here and which ones are working best in which season and whatnot. To learn, you got to go make the mistakes, and then you can kind of learn and get that knowledge, because knowing something is way different. You got to practice it. You got to understand it. And, crop growing or any kind of food growing is a perfect example of that.
I agree with you. That production of food, that helps us stay alive, to exist on whatever plane of existence we are on, whatever you want to call it. We've been taught that, say, sitting in a cubicle under fluorescent lights in front of a screen and you create an app, is that creating something? Well, it's expanding the economy, but when it comes down to it and you're hungry, you can't go in there and grab that app out of the fridge and eat it and continue to exist on this planet. It's growing the economy, and I guess they call it, you've created something, but it's nothing that is actually pertinent to our existence. When it comes down to it, does it make life more convenient? Well, yeah, possibly. But, it also always ends up being more trackable and traceable at the ultimate end of it. Like I said, everything has been weaponized against us in one way or another. And it really has nothing to do with our continued existence. You can't eat an app, even though it has been created. It's nothing to do with our existence.
Yeah, and those things only work as long as everything else works in that chain to provide, even the most basic, such as electricity. Now, if you lose the internet, because look around the planet, all these outages we've had from New York the explosions over in the refineries. Was that over there East Coast? We've got the South American outages. We got the West Coast outages, the undersea cables for the internet twice. Like, what is going on with the, what was considered stable infrastructure for electricity and internet communications? And it's not happening just in North America, South America. It's over in Asia, down in Africa. It's happening everywhere. So what is it with these? Is it a frequency change where something's suddenly magnetically starting to be a little bit different? Because, if you reverse the polarity or polarity gets changed a little bit in certain areas, it's definitely going to affect electricity. And this is the scary thing. If we couldn't have a magnetic pole reversal, nothing's going to work on our planet, because nothing will work that's an electronic device, period.
Would that have on the crust, that's on the outside of this planet, this giant dynamo that we're riding through space on? Where did the Rift Valley come from? And so all of a sudden you're going across Africa, and all of a sudden, boom, great big gouge in the earth. What caused that? Was it just an earthquake, or was that like the poles shifting and coming across and ripping a big rend in the surface as it's going across? Because it probably does have some major effect. Hopefully we won't find out, but maybe we will.
It could have been electrical arcing from another space body passing as well.
True.
Because you look at some of these, contours on the planet, and they replicate them in a lab when you're putting arcs on different kind of strata, especially like wet clay or something. You start to see the same striations coming off and crater formations or kind of dendritic ridges that are going up, and the way mountain formations are formed by the same ion patterns coming off of. You see a lot of similarities, and when you really start to look at the electrical nature of some of these huge discharge patterns, because the Grand Canyon never made sense to me. They were telling us, it's this one river that comes down and it winds, but it's only ever in that one place. And even as a kid, I always asked, well, how did it go over to the left? And there's 16 other places up here and all these other places. Like, how did it wear down and all that? But now this electric universe and this electrical discharge, literally from planetary bodies, we see it on Mars, we see it on our own planet, we see it on the moon, we see it everywhere. So something gigantic electrically has happened, and probably in the more recent past than they want to give credit for. Because again, that would spook everybody. Well, we had this giant planetary body come ripping through here, and we had discharge between two planets of literally lightning from the gods. Can you imagine Zeus? That's literally where Zeus came from, lightning bolts from the skies. That kind of huge arc where we're talking a 400-mile plasma bolt ripping down across the planet or something, that would be terrible. Can you imagine the wind coming off of that at the strike point and the amount of debris flying in the air and all those big giant...
I can relate to that because I don't know, folks, if you've ever had a lightning bolt strike anywhere close to you. I was riding through our pasture one day, and it started to sprinkle a little bit. So, me and my dog, there was a barn, fairly close. We stopped, and hold up in the barn and just, watch it sprinkle a little bit. When I was standing at the door to this barn, where all of a sudden, just out of the blue, a bolt from the blue, literally, just wham, 40 yards away from me, boom, and this old tree that was, it was dead, but it was still about 20 foot tall, Well, it's only about 5 foot of it left, and there were big, huge splinters blown through the air. The concussion wave hit me, kind of stunned me for a second, and then I'm standing there and I look around for my dog, and he's dematerialized and rematerialized on the other side of the barn in, a millisecond. And, I walk out, just kind of stunned, and the ozone in the air and the smell of the smoke from that, that was created by that massive discharge. We see them all the time, but, man, if you've ever had one hit close to you, it really brings it home, the power that's there, the power that the sea of energy that we're surrounded by. It just, for some reason, happened to hit that one particular tree at that moment. Was it just a moment in time? Was there some cause behind it? Or was it just happenstance? I can't say for certain because we've not been allowed to learn that. But there's some awesome power out there, and, that's not created by us. We do not control everything.
Look at the electrical nature of our planet being our crust is charged negatively. So our sun has that positive charge, and they meet somewhere up in the ionosphere. Now, since the sun's stepping down, it's an electrical activity. Like when we go into this grand solar minimum, this phase state or the electrical charge and how much real power is coming out of the sun is going to step down. Well, our Earth is going to need to match that. You talk about potential difference there. That equilibrium, that's got to equalize somewhere in that charge. Something can't say super highly overcharged when the other much larger overriding power system in that called the sun, that thing that's a million times larger off to the left over there, that thing is going to decrease in its power state. So can you imagine our little tiny Earth? We're definitely going to equalize with that. So you're talking about crustal...
Everything basically goes towards a state of equilibrium,
it sure does.
Osmotic membrane, from a higher concentration to a lower concentration. Nature attempts to balance itself out in whatever way it can.
And that might result in earthquakes because every grand solar minimum, we have these very large 8.8, 9.0 earthquakes riddled throughout the planet, volcanic eruptions. You know, you hit it on the head with the electric. What's going to happen with the crust of the planet when we get these electrical equilibriums or these discharges? Like even just last week, they had the most incredible lightning that was captured on film. It ran across the cloud layer as horizontal lightning, and then it dissipated and hit the ground, but it was still connected to that cloud where then that exact same bolt went from ground to sky back up in. Now, there's something very wrong when lightning does that. So here we are. We're already starting to see visible signs of electrical unusualness, shall we say.
And Dave, I've watched storms my whole life, you know, and I've noticed just what you're talking about lately. You'll go outside and a storm will be coming in, and, I mean, it'll look like a strobe light up there. I mean, just flick, 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 up in the clouds up there, and there's no sound. So is that, you know, what we conceive as lightning? Because generally when there's that discharge, you know, it displaces the air and it snaps back and we get the big concussion wave, boom, you know. But that doesn't happen on a lot of these storms. It's almost like that energy that you see up there, it's almost like it's being pumped into the system, and then eventually it discharges to ground. I have no other way to explain it than that possibility. You know, these ionospheric heaters, you know, are they pumping energy into a system to create a certain effect?
Yeah, there's so many unknowns. And, you know, you start to see these sprites and these blue jets. Some of these things were legend before. You know, I saw a red sprite at the top of the thunderhead or at the top of an electrical storm going up to the ionosphere up there and discharging out through that layer. But you're starting to see almost every single large electrical storm now has visible sprites, and not little ones, not little tiny ones. I mean, they're taking up a quarter of the head above the thunderheads that are there, that electrical storm itself. You know, these things are getting much more intense, these visible light wave kind of effects that we're seeing. And, you know, we're starting to see plasma streamers now in the sky that weren't seen before. What was that one name? They named it Steve, right? The one that was named in 2017, that plasma rope that was sighted in the sky. First time it's ever sighted in 2017. Now they've seen it 4 more times since then. What's going on with the plasma glow mode, where that thing's highly charged enough to go visible where our eyes can pick it up along the magnetic field lines, but it was only once before, never seen before. Now we've seen it 5 times in the last 2 years. Like, where did that come from suddenly? Because seeing it once for the first time and then seeing it again and again and again, something definitely upticked in terms of charge rate on this along the field line currents coming down into the poles. The potential
right.
there.
You know, are we experiencing more of that? What do they call it? The fourth state of matter? You know, plasma. You know, that we haven't. You know, I was never taught a lot about plasma physics. You know, I guess if you went into plasma physics, you might learn some about it. But once again, you're taught what the technocrats want you to be taught, and you might know more about plasma, but you don't possibly really know the ultimate uses or whatever plasma is. You know, it's a strange thing.
You know, we can come back into the Chinese with the representations of the dragons in the skies. Like, in my firm opinion, we're going to start to see some visible signs in the skies. We might even see dragons in the skies. We might see squatter man, different kind of petroglyphs and different types of things that are on cave walls or, you know, cliff faces that were drawn by the ancients. I really believe we're going to get to that level of highly electrified atmosphere as we move forward, where we're going to see strange sky phenomenon. But it'll be electrical in nature, so it's not to be scary. But it's just a cycle. And, you know, these ancients across the world have left us so many signs that our skies did become more highly active and much more highly charged. So to get ready for it again, those were the signs. These are what you see written and carved in stone across our planet for the last, 30,000 years. Those are things they really saw, and they're telling us it's coming back again. And I believe this is a cycle that's coming back.
Kind of like the Romanian Sphinx in the Basagi Mountains up there, you know, the giant pyramids being found in China and all across the planet. You know, we're not told a lot of things, folks. You know, we've been kept stupid.
I went and visited those up in Xi'an, around Xi'an, and then the real place where more of those pyramids are around Shenyang. It's outside of Xi'an, about maybe 20 or 30 kilometers. But there's hundreds of those, hundreds. The biggest one is the Qin Tomb, but it's a pyramid. But then there's a whole line following that ley line going out another, you know, a couple hundred kilometers of just pyramid after pyramid after pyramid along that same line. So those pyramids exist. They're earthen pyramids, and you know, they don't have the pointed top like Egyptians or flat top, more like Central American pyramids. But anyway, they're out there, incredible stuff. And if I could mention my book quick, since we had our last talk, I completed a new book called Climate Revolution, which goes into everything we talked about tonight. It explains the problem, the first part of the book, and then the second part of the book is all about the solutions and really what you can do to take action for this hopeful period we're coming into. I think it's the greatest opportunity in human history if you can see where the cycles have been previously and then you can map them out to see where your opportunity is moving in the future. It's titled Climate Revolution, David Dubine, Adapt 2030, and it's my new book. It's available as a digital copy only with 300 hyperlinks within the information, so you can go off and then do your own research on top of what I've written along with my co-author.
That sounds great, David. Yeah, I appreciate you giving me your time here. It's been an interesting conversation. I love talking about this stuff. I love the possibilities. But that requires an open mind to even be able to see these possibilities. And I appreciate you giving us your time, and I sure hope that we get to talk again in the future. Like I said, I'd love to do a 2-hour program with you, and we just scratch the surface of something else again. Unfortunately, because man, like I said, I could talk to you for a month probably and not even hit everything I want to. But it's been interesting. I think a lot of people out there like hearing about this stuff, and I definitely do appreciate it. And hopefully, we will be talking in the future.